Henry Caldwell just wanted his usual Thursday night McNuggets. Randall Weeks wanted something far more disturbing. When their paths crossed on a snowy Milwaukee night, a simple craving turned into a gruesome nightmare that would leave investigators speechless and a city terrified. It was a cold Thursday night in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The streets were slick with freshly fallen snow, and the wind cut through the air like a blade. Most of the city had already shut down for the night. Lights in the apartment buildings blinked off one by one, and traffic had nearly disappeared from the roads. But in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the city's south side, one man was still wide awake. Henry Caldwell sat on his couch, wrapped in a threadbare blanket, staring blankly at the glow of his television. He had just finished a double shift at the hardware store and should have been exhausted. But something stirred in him, an itch he couldn't ignore. The growl in his stomach was louder than the storm outside. He didn't want just anything to eat. He wanted McDonald's Chicken McNuggets. Henry's obsession with the golden, crispy bites had grown over the years into something close to ritual. He had a routine. Every Thursday night after payday, he would reward himself with a 20-piece McNugget meal, extra barbecue sauce, and a large sweet tea. It was a comforting end to a stressful week, something he looked forward to even more than payday itself. Friends had joked that he should have had them delivered, but Henry never trusted delivery with something so sacred. He insisted on going in person. Nuggets taste better when you earn them, he liked to say. That night, his usual McDonald's had already closed. The storm had forced early shutdowns across the city, and only one location remained open, a 24-hour drive-through on the outskirts of town. It was nearly 11 miles away, but Henry didn't hesitate. He checked the weather on his phone. Heavy snow, road warnings, visibility down to less than a quarter mile. Still, he stood up, threw on his parka, grabbed his keys, and stepped outside into the icy wind. The streets were mostly empty. Snow piled on the sidewalks and muffled the sound of his footsteps. His car, a rusted silver sedan with one broken headlight, groaned as he started it up. As he drove, his windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the falling snow. Streetlights cast hazy yellow halos in the whiteout conditions. But Henry didn't slow down. Each mile seemed more treacherous than the last. His tires slipped on corners. Ice formed on his side mirrors. But all he could think about was the crunch of the breading, the heat of the dipping sauce, the satisfaction of the first bite. It was more than hunger. It was fixation. At exactly 2:47 a.m., he pulled into the drive-thru. A camera caught the moment his car, barely visible under the snow, inching forward beneath the glowing menu board. He placed his order. Nuggets, barbecue, sweet tea. Then he waited. What happened after that moment remains a mystery. He never reached the payment window. The security footage, grainy and distorted by snow, shows his car pause, then simply disappear from frame. No one saw him again that night. Henry Caldwell had vanished into the storm, chasing a craving, and that was only the beginning. The following morning, as dawn broke over Milwaukee, the city slowly came back to life under a thick blanket of snow. Plows rumbled down major roads, carving paths through the frozen buildup, while commuters cautiously navigated the slippery streets. But in one small corner of the city, a car sat quietly in an alleyway, hidden between two abandoned buildings, its presence unnoticed by anyone passing by. The vehicle, a rusting silver sedan, was dusted with snow and parked at an awkward angle as though it had come to a sudden stop. The engine was off, the driver's seat empty, and the windows slightly fogged from the inside. No footprints surrounded it, and no nearby homes reported hearing anything unusual. The car belonged to Henry Caldwell. At 8:12 a.m., a sanitation worker spotted the vehicle while emptying trash bins behind the alley. Something about its placement felt wrong. He peered inside, expecting to see someone sleeping off a rough night, but found only silence. Called it in, and within an hour, police arrived to investigate. The initial inspection offered few answers. The doors were locked, and there was no sign of forced entry. A half-empty cup of sweet tea sat in the cuff holder, the only clue linking Henry to his final known actions. The interior was neat, no signs of a struggle, no blood, no personal belongings out of place. His phone, wallet, and keys were gone. The car was towed for further examination, but even under forensic analysis, it revealed nothing of interest. Henry's family, after trying and failing to reach him all morning, filed a missing persons report by that evening. When police reviewed the security footage from the McDonald's, what they found only deepened the mystery. At 2:47 a.m., Henry's car entered the drive-through lane. The timestamp confirmed that he placed his order. But moments later, the vehicle moved forward slightly and then vanished from view. There was no footage of him driving away, turning around, or exiting the car. One frame he was there, and in the next, he was gone. The employees working that night were questioned, but none had seen or heard anything out of the ordinary. The cashier remembered receiving the order, but never saw the driver's face clearly through the snow-covered window. The manager noted that a car disappeared from the line without picking up its food, but assumed the driver had gotten frustrated and left. It wasn't until the police came that anyone realized something was wrong. News of Henry's disappearance spread quickly across local social media. People speculated everything from a carjacking to a mental breakdown. Some even joked that he had frozen solid in pursuit of fast food, unaware of the dark truth unfolding behind the scenes. Days passed and the storm that had blanketed Milwaukee melted into slush, but no new clues emerged. Police searched the area surrounding the alley, knocked on doors, canvassed nearby businesses, reviewed more surveillance footage, and checked hospital records. Nothing turned up. It was as though Henry had been swallowed by the night, leaving only a car and an unanswered craving behind. Then, almost 3 weeks later, a package arrived. Unmarked, hand-delivered, and chilling in its simplicity. Inside was a flash drive. No note, no return address, just a label scrawled in red ink. For the truth. The flash drive arrived in a plain manila envelope, addressed to the Milwaukee Police Department, with no sender information. There were no fingerprints on the packaging, no postage marks, and no surveillance footage of its delivery. It appeared on a desk as if it had materialized out of nowhere. Inside the envelope was a small USB stick with one label. For the truth, detectives were cautious. Cybersecurity experts scanned the drive for viruses or malicious software. Once cleared, they opened a single video file titled Kitchen Cam, MP4. The footage was shaky and dimly lit, recorded from a handheld camera. The setting became immediately clear inside the back kitchen of the same McDonald's, where Henry Caldwell was last seen. The footage began with the sound of a door creaking open. The camera moved slowly, panning past shelves lined with frozen patties and boxes of fries. Someone was filming covertly. The person behind the camera wore black gloves, and their reflection briefly appeared in a metal surface. They were also wearing a mask. Heavy breathing was the only sound besides the soft hum of the freezer units. The camera focused on the walk-in freezer door. It creaked open, revealing shelves of frozen meat products. The gloved hand reached toward the bottom shelf and retrieved what appeared to be a pair of black sneakers. Close inspection revealed a small, unique patch on the heel, just like the ones Henry Caldwell had been wearing the night he vanished. The video lingered on the shoes for a few seconds, before cutting to another section of the kitchen. Next, the camera panned toward the industrial fryer. The bubbling oil hissed loudly, drowning out the ambient kitchen noise. The camera zoomed in slowly, and under the surface of the oil something seemed off. A faint discoloration, a fabric-like texture, something that didn't belong. It was impossible to tell exactly what it was, but it clearly wasn't food. Just before the footage ended, the camera turned to a wall in the storage room. A vent had been removed from the duct, revealing a hollow space inside. The gloved hand reached in and retrieved a greasy napkin. As the camera zoomed in, revealing a set of coordinates written in thick, smudged grease pencil. Then the footage cut to black. The video was chilling and surreal. Investigators rushed to shut down the restaurant and conduct a thorough search. Health inspectors combed through every inch of the kitchen. The fryers were drained, the freezer emptied, the walls torn open. No human remains were found, but behind the same vent seen in the video. They discovered the napkins still marked with the same handwritten coordinates. Authorities now had their first real lead. The coordinates pointed to a rural area about 40 miles north of the city. It was a desolate stretch of farmland, dotted with abandoned barns and dense tree lines. Police began to piece together the disturbing possibility that his disappearance had nothing to do with the snowstorm or an accident, everything to do with something far darker. The case that once seemed like a strange missing persons incident was now spiraling into a sinister mystery, involving secret footage, hidden clues, and something deeply unsettling about what had happened in that McDonald's kitchen. Whatever the coordinates led to, it wasn't going to be good. The coordinates scrawled on the napkin led police north, far from the city's lights, deep into Wisconsin's frozen countryside. The area was quiet, remote, and surrounded by thick woods and crumbling farmland. At the end of a long dirt road, past a rusted gate and a line of crooked fence posts, sat a decaying two-story farmhouse. The windows were boarded, the roof sagged from years of neglect, and the surrounding yard was littered with rusting tools, broken furniture, and chicken wire. The property belonged to Randall Weeks, a former McDonald's employee who had been fired 3 years earlier for stealing bulk food supplies. At the time, he'd seemed harmless, a quiet, reclusive man who mostly kept to himself. After losing his job, Randall had retreated from public life entirely. No one had heard from him in years. No family, no friends, no digital footprint. Armed with a search warrant, police entered the farmhouse. The interior was colder than outside. The windows had been sealed tight with plastic wrap and duct tape. The walls were stained with smoke and grease. A thin layer of dust covered everything, except the kitchen, which was spotless to clean. That's where they found the first sign that something wasn't right. In the freezer were dozens of containers, each labeled with masking tape. Most were marked with basic food terms: chicken, beef, wings. But 3 containers were different. One was labeled Caldwell, another said Sample A. The third had only a date matching the night Henry went missing. Forensics later confirmed what police already feared. Human tissue was found in the first container. DNA analysis proved it belonged to Henry Caldwell. Further investigation revealed a disturbing setup. In the barn behind the house, officers discovered rows of metal cages, each previously used to house live poultry. In the corner, a makeshift workstation was equipped with knives, meat grinders, industrial seasoning packets, the same kind used by McDonald's suppliers. There was also a whiteboard covered in charts, with notes about texture, taste, and ingredient composition. It was clear that Randall hadn't just been hoarding meat, he had been experimenting. Authorities concluded that Randall had created a black market operation where he produced and sold imitation fast food using gourmet ingredients. But the twist was far more horrifying than they expected. He wasn't just using animals. He was mixing human meat into his products, disguising them as rare imported delicacies. Investigators uncovered evidence of online transactions, suggesting that Randall had been distributing his creations under the radar to wealthy, eccentric buyers willing to pay high prices for exclusive blends. How Henry ended up involved remained a haunting question. It appeared Randall had begun luring victims under false pretenses, offering jobs, responding to food delivery requests, even intercepting orders. Henry, so deeply fixated on his craving, had become an easy target. Randall likely followed him from the McDonald's, manipulated the drive-thru setup, and abducted him silently. The timing, the snowstorm, and the lack of witnesses had created the perfect cover. What seemed at first to be a bizarre disappearance tied to a fast food craving had now unraveled into something far more sinister. Randall Weeks had not just murdered, he had turned his victims into product. Henry Caldwell had unknowingly become the centerpiece of a macabre culinary operation hiding in plain sight. Randall Weeks was arrested at dawn, just hours after the discovery at his farmhouse. He was found sitting calmly in a rocking chair in his living room, sipping a cup of coffee and staring out the window at the snow-covered fields. He didn't resist. He didn't ask why the police were there. In fact, he smiled when they told him he was under arrest. As they placed him in handcuffs, he muttered just 5 words. "Took you long enough, officers." At the station, Randall was eerily cooperative. He confessed to everything without hesitation. Over the course of several interviews, he described his operation in chilling detail, how he had started small, experimenting with spices, blending meats, searching for what he called the perfect bite. He explained how people wouldn't question what they were eating if the presentation was familiar, if it came in a paper box with a well-known logo. He referred to his victims as ingredients, not people. To him, Henry Caldwell wasn't a man, He was a test case, subject in what Randall believed was a higher form of culinary art. He even admitted to placing the flash drive in the police department himself. When asked why, he simply said he wanted credit, not for the murders, but for the innovation. Public reaction was immediate and explosive. News of the case spread nationally within days. People were horrified that someone could exploit a beloved fast food item in such a grotesque way. Social media flooded with speculation, conspiracy theories, and even jokes until the official confirmation of human remains. Then the laughter stopped. McDonald's issued multiple statements denying any association with Randall Weeks, condemning the crimes, and emphasizing their strict food sourcing policies. The restaurant where Henry was last seen was permanently closed, and the building was later demolished. The company quietly offered financial support to Henry's family, though they refused to speak publicly about the matter. Henry's family held a small memorial in his honor. They gathered at the alley where his car had been found, lit candles, and placed a box of Chicken McNuggets on the hood of a snow-covered sedan parked nearby. For them, it was more than a meal. It was a symbol of Henry's simplicity, his routine, and the innocent craving that had led to such a tragic end. Randall Weeks was charged with multiple counts of murder, abuse of a corpse, illegal food production, and fraud. During his trial, he showed no remorse. He often smiled during testimony, particularly when the discussion turned to food. A psychiatric evaluation labeled him a high-functioning sociopath, but legally sane. He was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life without parole. The story became a grim urban legend, a cautionary tale about trust, obsession, and how something as harmless as a craving could lead to a nightmare. Henry Caldwell wasn't famous, rich, or reckless. He was just a man who loved McNuggets. That simple desire became the trap that led him to a fate more horrifying than anyone could have imagined.